Hi, Lauren.
Hi.
Okay, I think we have a good enough turnout, so we can start. A very warm welcome to everybody here. Thank you so much for joining us on a Wednesday, Wednesday evening. Hope you guys are having a good day, and hope you guys have an even better day going ahead. So I guess you all already know our topic of the discussion. But to start before that, I would like to just tell everybody that our website, www.upcyclelux.com, is live. Please do go check out. We have worked really hard on it and hope for all of you to have a wonderful experience going through that. And these are all the brands that have worked with us to make this happen. So thanks to all the founders that have joined us. And I would like our founder, Ms. Harshita Chandra, to say a few words and to just address the crowd here.
Thank you so much, Swati, for the record. I am so pleased to welcome each one of you to be a part of Cycle Lark Launch Today Talk. Share your experiences in fashion world. So thank you, everybody, and all the founders who have been so supportive and spread the love and then being in a conscious community and growing it. Finally, the website is live, and you can check out our website or content, and feel free to share your feedback on that. Love to know more about it and how we can nurture and then do a little bit of excitement there and growing the conscious community more. So, our mission at Upcycle Lab to build a disruptive conscious community of fashion and lifestyle where it is our responsibility to provide knowledge, transparency, and a guilt-free shopping experience
I'm
for
so sorry, Priyansha and Arushi. Can you guys mute so only the speaker can be heard properly? Yes.
It's all right. So we are here to accelerate the mindful transition towards sustainable fashion. That's why we strongly believe in green is the new luxury. So that's our motto. Where our today's conversation will be stating our journey together and grow our community as much as possible, big and global. So thank you everyone for the constant love and support. And it's your destiny. I mean, we are happy to share the entire platform and your experience together.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Harshita. So to start with, I think the past year has been a roller coaster. It has been a disruptor. I mean, no words can really describe what the last year has been for most of us. But to I think see just the silver lining, I think we can very confidently say that people have consciously started reaching out to products to look for products at least to minimize the impact on the already tipping ecological balance, which has, I think, had a very huge impact on the brands as well, especially the brands pursuing sustainable fashion through their business models. 2020 has also shown all the Indian market what a major opportunity is to come up with. I'm so sorry. We have people, yeah, for people to adopt a D2C model, and how if it's laid out properly with a proper supply chain system, it's the ideal thing to do. We are seeing more and more labels take up sustainability as a major philosophy for their brand and head out with that. And I think homegrown brands in general have been making their presence felt in the industry so well, by the kind of traditional craftsmanship that they brought in or the kind of designs. Talking about which, let's start with, I think, Miss Kriti, if you are comfortable. Doodlage has been there for almost 200 since 2014. It's been over almost reaching a decade, and they have. If for people those who don't know about Doodlage is a brand that has been making garments, high street fashion garments out of uh, by upcycling and recycling waste fabrics, and they have pretty much aced the thing, and they have been doing so well. So I think in most research papers we have heard that the whole idea of resale and recycling is going to be the next thing, and it's going to soar like anything in the coming years. Do you personally think that that is possible in a post-pandemic world, and how does Doodlage plan to take this ahead?
Thanks, Swati, for that question. And
Kriti, we cannot hear you. Not able to hear you. We have not yet.
No.
I think maybe if you get earphones, that might help. Actually,
Oh,
you
she,
already have. So maybe if you remove the earphones.
no. She can come back. We can just
Yeah,
another
yeah,
question. Yeah.
no problem. If you can maybe log out and log in back. Yeah. Anyway, hopefully she will continue the conversation for that. But I think other than recycling has been a traditional thing since many years in India. But other than recycling, also handloom has been something that is a very deep rooted thing in India. And I think in the coming years, there has been a drastic decline in the popularity for handloom. Unfortunately, we have over 3.5 million handloom workers in the country, and still there is not as much appreciation for it. While there are brands like Ehmev, Lumart, and Ampersand doing such amazing work, we have the founders here. From Ehmev, we have Manish. From Lumart, we have Arushi, and we have Priyansha, who is representing Ampersand. So this is the question to the three of you. You guys have been doing such a great work in creating an awakening for handloom through the amazing collection that you guys have been presenting. But do you think there is still something that is lacking, or still something that is needed from from a consumer side or from the government, that more can be done to drive it towards growth? What are your thoughts? I think Arushi, you can start, or Priyansha, whoever.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Uh, I think we have with Lumart, we've been working to promote the whole ideologies of handloom from past 4 years now, and I think the whole struggle of being handloom back in vogue has been pretty real. With regards to, it's not just really about the idea of promoting. The whole handloom sector and hand woven fabrics. I think on the larger level, there are a lot of layers which are a part of this whole ideology of awakening handloom sector, and these things we really need to work on these things simultaneously. So there's no really way where we pick up a way that probably we need some help or financial aid or any kind of educational aid from the government point of view or from our point of view, because there are a lot of layers which are interlinked together that really need to be worked on simultaneously. Apart from that, I believe that we even the designers or the artisans or everyone working together, we are of course trying to do our bit, where we are taking the first step of promoting handloom on a global level, and we are bringing the whole ideologies of woven textile and everything on a global platform. But what I personally have realized over the period of time, that if you really want to promote handloom on a larger level, there are a lot of parts involved in it. Whereas if we think from the perspective of an artisans, we really need to also educate the artisans in a way where they're really willing to promote this whole craft to their future generations now, because I think the crafts are getting extinct, and a lot of artisans, they've really given up on the whole idea of promoting this craft and giving it to the next generation. So I think something on those lines also, we really need to figure a way out where we are educating the craftsmen enough so that they find a potential in working in the whole sector for a really long period of time. I think that is also something that over the years I personally have realized where we are lacking a bit, and I'm trying to work more towards on those areas, apart from just promoting more of a culture of hand woven textiles, I believe. I
And itself, yes.
Definitely, completely makes sense. Manish, Priyansha, you guys have any points to share?
Uh, See, Harshita, you are right. I guess, Swati, we need more awareness regarding brands who claims they are sustainable, but actually they are not following sustainable practices. So they are just selling anything in the name of sustainable. So what I really think that this education needs to be imparted to the larger audience, that okay, how you can differentiate between actually a sustainable fabric or cloth or outfit and what is not sustainable. So this actually is not clear, right? So anybody who's saying, okay, I am selling a cotton, pure cotton fabric, is sustainable, but is it actually? That is not sure. So 100% sustainable practices are not followed by every brand, I would say. We are just started, I would say, right? So maybe government, can start with certain kind of awareness programs, or we as a label can create some certain kind of datas, or maybe some material for the larger audience, for the larger crowd, so that they would get knowledge. When I am buying a particular outfit from, let's say, the Loom or the AMA or maybe Sabyasachi, right? So is it sustainable, and how to differentiate it? How I can find out whether the brand who is claiming sustainable, they are actually sustainable or not? So that is my concern, because when I see brands, they talk seriously big, right? And they definitely label themselves as a big, and then their prices are, they are claiming, okay, we are 100% sustainable from point 1 to point 10, right? So from process A to process Z, so we are following 100%, and that comes with a cost, for sure. But according to me, I would say, no, more than 60-70% people, or brands who claim they are sustainable, they are not following sustainable practices. That needs to be uh, given to the people, telling the truth. Okay, what is exactly the sustainable? How we can follow the practices? And yes, if I am claiming in IMA I am 100% sustainable, I am not. I myself is telling I am not, right? I might follow, let's say, 90% or 80%, but yes, 20% is still, there is a gap which needs to be filled. Yeah.
Completely understandable. It is almost impossible to reach that 100% sustainable area, which is completely understandable. But yeah, the credibility of each brand is what is being questioned. So I think that is the area that is definitely there. Priyansha, would you like to say something?
So what I feel is that from the government's perspective, I think the government should try and make handlooms more aspirational. So for the young generation to take it up, and perhaps at the level of designers, they could perhaps take up imparting design, because when we work with the weavers, they have a lot of skills, but then their knowledge of designs is something that lacks. So as designers, we should rather adopt and try and train them on the design perspective, so that they can create their own interpretations of the design and not what we want them to do. So that would also give them their own language. They would, yeah. So that is what I feel. And yeah, so that's about it.
No, completely makes sense. Completely agree with all of you. And I think other than handloom, also there have been other innovative fibers that have come in as a replacement, or rather alternative to cotton and polyester, which our brands here, Core and Evoke, Saisha and Shruti, they have been doing some exceptional work, bringing in different fabrics like tencel, hemp. There are the cellulosic ones, yeah, like eucalyptus, orange, and I mean it's very amusing to even imagine that fabrics could be made out of these fibers. So I think they have been doing some exceptional work. So if you guys can let us know, how was your journey, with using these kind of fibers, and do you think the customers have been accepting of them, or is there some challenges that you guys have faced? Please do share your journey so far.
Okay. Hi, guys. Can you hear me? Am I
Yeah.
audible? Okay,
Yes.
great. Firstly, congratulations. I'm so excited for your new website, and
Thank you.
diving right into the answer without wasting any time. Yes, when we first discovered alternative materials like orange peels, like fabrics made out of orange peels or rose petals or aloe vera, it was very interesting for me because I was like, this is something new and I really want to learn more about it and see how we can bring it to the Indian market. Which was a challenge because these fabrics are also extremely delicate, soft, and fine. And with the kind of designs that we wanted to put out in the market, it was sort of like a catch-22 situation. I was just like, I want these fabrics, but I want these styles. How do we make them work? So there was a lot of innovation with me, my artisans, my entire team. But I think these hurdles are what sort of brought us together to make these collections successful. Initially, when we had our brick and mortar store, yes, it was a little difficult because we had to explain to each and every client what the fabric was, how it was made, and a lot of clients weren't really interested in that. And I see post-pandemic, people have become a lot more conscious. So when we leave that information on our website, people are more likely to purchase because they're seeing that, we are making a difference, whether it's the fabrics that we use or the way that we manufacture. That's where transparency comes in as well. And we're like, here, all the information is for you and do what you like with it, but what you're buying into is as honest and fair as it can be.
Yeah, completely. Makes sense. Shruti?
Hi, everybody. So like Sasha said, I think have embarked on a very similar journey where we, started out with a mission to look for fabrics which were eco-friendly in a sense where we were trying to measure the impact that they have on the planet. So how much natural resources were being used to make a certain fiber and to make a fabric out of it was what we've continuously been looking for. And these were the fabrics then we started to work with. And definitely, like Sasha said, these are newer materials. Not a lot of people know about them. They don't know what the wear and care is going to be, what the printing techniques or other things around it are going to be like across the value chain, right? So it's a continuous process of innovation and research and development. And for us to work with these fabrics is an extremely delightful challenge. And for us to talk about this with our consumers is extremely engaging and it's a fun conversation to have. Their surprise is very genuine and real. Their concerns are real, and to address that is a pleasure. And I think it's extremely wonderful to see the response that we've had with our consumers to this. And definitely post pandemic, we are looking at a sustainable alternate lifestyle. We're trying to switch to all things as sustainable as they can be. Like even Manisha said before, there's nothing 100% sustainable. So, we're all trying to take our bits, do our bits, take one step at a time and get there and make fashion a more sustainable industry.
Yeah, completely makes sense. And I think talking about alternative materials, we have the founder of Beej, Arundhati, who is amongst the first people who brought in the plant-based materials like Pinatex and Risotto in the accessory space. She uses them for her bag collections, which have been so well renowned and they are doing very well. Another thing, if I may ask, I think in the whole alternative materials in an accessory space is something that is still not as explored compared to apparels. What made you get into this, and have you faced any challenges, or what's the journey been like for you?
Thanks, Swati. Hi, Harshita. Congratulations to you and Swati and the entire team. Journey started, and I've told you guys this earlier. I come from a family of leather exports, so I actually grew up with leather and bags. And then when I wanted to start my own business, I started looking at sustainable alternatives more from a research perspective because I didn't know much about the space. Sustainability was an area of personal interest, but I didn't know much about materials. And then I suddenly I remember the first time I was Googling and I saw this difference between sustainable and vegan. Many people still don't get that difference, right? They think they are interchangeable and they're completely not. And I remember this whole eureka moment happened in my head. I'm like, okay, they're not the same thing. And I started looking up. And then that's when I discovered that there is so much research happening in this space already. There is cork. Cork is a material that has been around forever in Europe, in the Mediterranean. And now when I work a lot with cork, I'm thinking, why haven't people been using it more? It's a fabulous material to work with. And then I discovered Pinatex, which is made out of pineapple leaves. There's so much research happening in that space. Today there's algae, there's soya, there's mushroom, there's apple skin, it's endless, So we currently work with Pinatex, which comes from waste pineapple leaves. We work with Deserto, which is cactus pulp. We work with cork, but I'm now, I just heard a few days ago about somebody who's been using sugarcane and cellulose remains to make leather, and it's a research happening in India, and I'm so excited to see how it goes. So my journey has been, I am just very excited about new stuff. So I think it's been a lot of fun. Not like, people are lining up outside our stores to buy. Not yet. I think there's a long journey to make there, because people have genuine questions. Why is it so expensive? What is the durability? How does it compare to leather? And I think for all of us out here, because we are early movers in this space, a large part of our responsibility is to build awareness and education in whatever we do. So we do a lot of that, but I can tell you it's been a fun ride. I can't hear you. Swati, you're on mute.
I'm so sorry. Any challenges you have faced so far with these materials?
Well, the first challenge is that the materials come outside the country.
Yeah.
When the pandemic happened, global supply chains were very badly affected. I can tell you, when I imported cactus leather the first time, it was stuck in the Mumbai customs for 3 months, because they were like, "Ye PU hai, ye PVC hai, ye leather hai." So they didn't have a code for it. They didn't know how to enter it in their systems.
Yeah.
Those are challenges when you work with something new.
Yeah.
Because we didn't heard of it. So the customs official didn't know how much to put as customs duty. Should it be the same as leather or PVC or fabric?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Makes sense. But I think that that's also the beauty of that, we have such a wide array of the brands that are catering to the market, from people doing conventional, traditional stuff to people pursuing more innovative things. So it's all of that is happening. But I think we have Lauren here with us, who is from Fashion United, who has, if for people who might not know, Fashion United is one of the most trusted global networks for a broad range of information connecting the global fashion community. Lauren, I think you'd be the ideal person here to kind of shine some light on what is a more global perspective in terms of the small and medium enterprises that are all out there. So what is your view with regards to the same?
Yeah, thank you. Well, first off, also congratulations, right? I know you guys have put in a lot of hard work, so it's great to see that it has come together. But yeah, I definitely think that we've seen from our side, I mean, we operate in around 30 countries. We've seen a lot of changes, and a lot of them also have happened throughout the pandemic, right? And what we've seen is that actually sustainability and in the fashion industry, from our perspective, has been something that was always kind of a trend. And I think, Manish, you were saying that as well. A lot of these brands and companies tossed it around lightly, right? And also some pretty big companies who, in effect, probably if you do a check, either from supply chain to you name it, you'll see that, in effect, it's a lot of greenwashing. And as a whole, though, we are seeing that the industry is reevaluating values. And it also has to do with a time when people are staying closer to themselves. So be it from a financial perspective, people are thinking about what is important to them, where are they going to spend their money, and how does that make them feel? And as a result, and of course, because we're a media company, so I can talk to it from that point of view. I mean, we've seen a huge increase in people trying to educate themselves about what's happening in the industry regarding sustainability. So it can be anything from what are materials, what are new innovative materials, but also, you know, what kind of innovators are there in terms of the industry. And it's actually created a huge opportunity for smaller companies, medium-sized companies, because what we're seeing, these huge companies, when the pandemic hit, the entire chain of command went on freeze, right? Whereas these smaller companies were able to see what's happening, be in conversation with the consumers, and figure out how they're going to profile themselves. How are they going to share their story? I mean, it's no secret that people have been online much, much more on their phones, trying to read the news, trying to find out what's happening. And a lot of smaller brands actually took time to focus on their storytelling, on their transparency, and getting their story out there within the fashion industry. And you see actually that they've been very successful in doing so, because people are looking to find thought leaders. People are looking to find people who can educate, who know what they're talking about. And they're actually taking the time to do their research to look past these companies that are greenwashing. So as a result, you know, and as I said, I can talk to it from the data point of view as well. We've just seen a lot of questions, a lot of searches, both on our platform, but also that have been directed from Google, right? About sustainable brands. What are the best sustainable brands, materials? So I think there's a lot of opportunity, despite this being a challenging time. And as you guys have all mentioned, the challenges that you face on a company level. But I also think that there's a lot of opportunity to get your story out there and to really differentiate yourself, especially compared to people who have questionable sustainability practices. So yeah, I think it's a good time, but a lot of people felt that in a pandemic, we need to not be focusing on talking about ourselves, which is a shame because it's actually a great time. No one can go anywhere. People are in lockdown. So the phone or the computer is what people are utilizing, right? To educate themselves. So take the opportunity. And even if you maybe can't invest the resources, I mean, resources are big, right? It can be financial, time, make the time or set apart some resources to really focus on your storytelling and focus on your USPs, right? So it could be that it's orange peels, right? Which is mind-blowingly fascinating for people to read up on. So why not share that? Share your experiences, share your learnings. So yeah, it's a great opportunity. So I hope that answers your question in a very drawn out way, but
No, it definitely does. Kriti, are you back? Is your mic working?
You tell me?
Yes, it is, yes.
Great.
So yeah,
So I'm back on my phone.
Yes, tell us.
Yes. Firstly, again, congratulations on putting all of this together. I know Harshita has been following up with so many questions, which a lot of them are still probably unanswered, but we try our best to contribute and help out during this time for you to be able to set up Googlers on Upcycle Loops. And Lauren, I was just hearing whatever you were saying, and I was glad that, okay, we do check pretty much everything on the list during the pandemic. This was, I think, a great time for us to first look at just taking that time to educate people because everybody was pretty much stuck wherever they were. Our supply chains, because we're working with waste, so it's nobody's concern. Whoever is throwing it out is just the godowns were blocked, raw material was unsorted. Things that were on handloom were stopped. So we genuinely connected with peers during this time, got everybody together, did a lot of takeovers, educated not just about sustainability, that things that we do, but what everybody else in the industry is also doing. So I think it was quite interesting to hear what you had to say from a media perspective and that we somewhere fit the bill. And in terms of your question, Swati, I think the numbers globally have proven, the market for reselling is the way forward. It is apparently going to take over fast fashion in about 2032. The market in Europe and US is continuously growing for reselling. And even in India, it is very interesting to see a lot of Insta shops around thrift coming around, because I think it's extremely important to, by the end of it, it's still fashion, right? So it has to be enticing for consumer to buy into the idea and then understand the need for it. Small shop everywhere that are cropping about just does that and makes it a very personal experience for the consumer who's buying. So I think that as a trend has been picking up. It's still at a very one-to-one, person-to-person, knowing where these raw materials or these second-hand clothing is coming from. As of now, India is doing pretty well on that. And I mean, I genuinely feel that it's the necessity of the art to figure out how to reuse what we've already produced. If you look at the wastage from factories, you know the numbers are crazy, and we can't keep producing and producing more without putting thought into what happens to what is already produced. And in that area specifically, it's something that we started. We only work with that. The idea was to always work with wastages. And when we started, sustainability wasn't a conversation in India. It was literally everybody used to pretty much say, one, why do you do what you do? Why is it so expensive? Why are you sitting in these, and these are people who own factories, right? That, why are you sitting in our godowns and what are you looking for? And it is always going to be questionable as to what is your actual purpose. So, we've gone through the journey of one, making the concept understandable for factories, to making this a conversation amongst consumers as well, and doing a lot more communication as to what goes into upcycling fabric wastages. And now we are actually thinking about, we've done always these little swaps. We encourage people to always send their clothing back to us. And then we figure out what we and how we can more responsibly treat that, work with that, and not let it end in landfills. It could be our clothing, it could be any other clothing. It could be that once we have enough, we just organize swaps, etc. But going forward, we actually do within this year plan to get both influencers and brands together to do a little bit of thrifting ourselves, to mainly talk more about the need for thrifting fashion, and be okay with the concept of wearing and re-wearing. I understand post-pandemic, and even now, there are like a lot of questions of, is it safe? And the markets suffered a little bit, but like everything else, I feel this too shall pass.
Well, fingers crossed. That's all that we can hope for. But I think, like something Lauren specifically said, that these other brands, since they have like such a long supply chain, it's difficult to figure out where you went wrong and how can you sort of, bridge the gap in between. The fact that all these homegrown brands have shorter supply chains is definitely a perk I think they would have to kind of be more transparent. So this is an open question to all of you. So if the fact that you have a shorter supply chain definitely makes it easier for you to have a more transparent supply chain. Is this completely true, or do you still feel there are places wherein it having a shorter supply chain is also a point of difficulty or a challenge?
Swati, I was reading the article from Voice of India. Recently they published that there is a technology called blockchain. So if that technology companies are adopting, sooner or later we have to adopt that kind of technology, right? So when you can record each and every step, of the entire fabric garment, whatever we are making, since starting from the weaving, spinning, till the warehouse and then delivering to the customers, right? So every transaction, every steps would be recorded, and anybody can get the access of those nodes, those transactions online. So once this is there in the system, people start accepting it. One can check, and the transparency would be 100%. So sooner or later, you will see things will get implemented. Even Government of India is looking at the blockchain industry. It is upcoming now. I know it's very very difficult to understand the technology, but yes, what I could read, what I could foresee now, things would change, and transparency would be more once people start accepting this technology.
Definitely, definitely. Anybody else would like to say something on that?
Swati, I also think, in marketing the fact that there is a long supply. I think it comes down to how much do brands really want to do.
Arushi, I'm so sorry. Can you mute yourself? Some disturbance. Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry. I was like, it comes down to how much do brands really want to disclose. There are, brands are very selective about disclosing. So, you would disclose parts that make you look good. You would not disclose parts that are questionable. So it's got nothing, it has to do with long and short, but not all the time, So at least at Beach, I like talking about our entire supply chain because it helps. Because, if someone was to ask me a question, let's say on cork, for example, saying, why is your bag costing 2x compared to another cork bag that I can buy from, you can buy from a wholesaler in Alibaba from China. I have to be able to explain that, hey, it comes from this company in Portugal. Go look it up. This is their process. These are their certifications. And it makes sense to disclose it. So I think it's also a matter of choice that brands exercise.
Yeah, makes sense. Arushi, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think I believe that the way Arundhati just said that it is of course a matter of choice, that how brands really want to put them out there in front of the media, the world, the consumers. And I also believe that we all are somewhere trying to do the bit, and we're all taking the plunge and doing the very first steps, and we're trying to do it right. So there will be times when you are trying to get it all right, but you will not get it all right. So definitely talking about where we are lacking, and I mean, like today we're having a panel like this and we're discussing where we are probably lacking or where we are trying to make it right, or how Kriti said that reselling is of course the future of fashion. So putting these things together, probably adjoining them in a way and lining them in a way is definitely helping us to foresee fashion. But when it comes to transparency, of course, to having a conversation with the consumer is really important, and trying to be more transparent is important. I believe that on the larger forefront, even if a brand is having a very smaller supply chain, there is a possibility that probably there are few gray areas that you will see. Definitely that will happen no matter how hard we try, because it is a whole circular process. Be it, we don't really end the whole supply chain at the point of designing the garment. It it continues to the process of packaging, and even the person who's delivering the whole package. So when we talk about from from the fabric, the crop to the whole end of the garment, and also the consumer really using the garment in a way which is completely circular. So I think keeping a track of the whole process is a little tricky, but I think we might reach there definitely. Like Manish just talked about the technologies that we will get in handy in the couple of years. You never know wherever we can reach. So
Yeah, hopefully technology will guide us through and help us in doing this better. But something that Lauren was saying, I think media and marketing and content marketing is something that is, I think, a very useful tool for these small brands. So Lauren, if you would like to share some tips and tricks that our small brands could probably use to spike our marketing strategies.
Yeah, of course. Well, yeah, definitely a few tips regarding that. I think first and foremost, know your USP, because I think if you internally haven't defined your USP, it's very hard to communicate that externally. So know what it is, and also then literally take the steps to communicate it. I know that a lot of people think, well, if I have to get my name out there, I just have to, put out articles and blog posts and all kinds of things continuously. And of course, repetition is important to have name recognition and name preference, but it's about it being thoughtful content, right? Even if you look at it from a Google perspective in terms of findability, it has to be relevant content, thoughtful content, not just content for the sake of content. So that's really important. And what is great is figure out different ways that you can profile yourself. So obviously in terms of written content, social media, that obviously speaks for itself, but think outside the box, think about marketplaces, obviously like UpCycleLux, because that also allows you to be found in a different capacity. So those things are really important. But when it comes to being a brand, I think honesty, right? Communicate honestly about what goes well and what doesn't go well. Because I think you will have a better connection with your consumers if you're able to be upfront about even the learnings that you've had or the mistakes that you've made, because they'll actually see like, you know what, these are people who are honest. These are people who are able to share what their process has been. And as a result, I think that's a binding factor. But yeah, I mean, as I said previously, it is important to really focus on content. In your team, think about different things that you would want people to know. Like we always joke around, like, what are the 3 things you want someone to know about your company? And you'd be surprised that a lot of people need to really think about that. But that's a good starting point, because you need to know in what capacity you're able to talk about it. And it can be anything, literally from material usage to your founding story even, or what drives you. And I think what you'll see in terms of sustainable companies, the conversation about why you're doing what you're doing is one that will definitely align with people's values. So, I mean, those are just a few kind of tips I could offer, but please do focus on content, because it is really important. And you need to put out this content to be found, to have people, bind themselves to you, and also want to then, as a result, believe in your business and spend their money there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think talking about values, again, an open question to everybody, just having a more transparent system and having a system wherein your values are sustainability, about transparency, and that you want, that it's all about the betterment for the planet, for the people, for everybody. Do you think, or your co-workers or your employees that are working for all of you, do you think that having these values set as a brand has impacted your employees in the kind of work that they do?
Okay, can I answer that question?
Yeah, please.
So I can't begin to this when I was thinking of this question, I can't begin to tell you how it hit home for me, because I grew up in the industry. So I grew up in a home that specifically focused on designing, that had their in-house manufacturing, the works. I have seen today people working for Core who've been with our family for 25 years. And for them, it was a huge shift. They were into making heavy Indian garments for like brides and, weddings and things like that. And then I came, swooped right in and said, hey, I have something completely different in mind. And I was afraid. I was just like, these people have seen me grow up. They've seen me as a kid. Are they going to listen to me? Are they going to take me seriously? But they did, and they were so open to the fact that we wanted to make a change and a positive difference. And I kept telling them, it's not about, I don't want garments to be churned out overnight. I care about you guys, and I care about the living conditions that you're in. I care about how much you're paid. And when you start having these conversations with them, that's where they sort of swoop right in and say, hey, okay, this is how we can help you. These are how, in our designs, in their expertise, they tell you, they're like, okay, fine, you can cut a garment in a different way to reduce your wastage. And if we do that for like an entire collection, our wastage will decrease significantly. These are people who've had eons of experience, something that I don't think any of us will ever be able to catch up to, because they've literally worked in the market. So yes, I mean, they have been extremely open to it, and they also appreciate the fact that a lot of these platforms now, like Upcycle Lux and other marketplaces, really dive into a company's, like you said earlier, transparency. They want to know more about the supply chain. Who's making my clothes? Like Fashion Revolution asks us every year, who is making your clothes? So when I sit there and I'm like, hey, can I take a picture of you? I hope you don't mind. And they're like, no, please take a picture of us. I want your customers to know that I made this and I stitched it for you. And yeah, it's really exciting. We did it, in fact, last week. We took videos of from our pattern cutter to our tailor to everyone. And they all spoke in Hindi, but they just had a blast. They were like, oh, this is where we're from. And, I've had so many years of experience. And I feel like when we give artisans who are actually stitching together our garments for us, yes, we're designing them. Yes, we've, it's our marketing, our creative direction, etc., etc. But these people who are literally stitching our garments, when they're given this sort of platform or this sort of recognition, it really helps them grow and it makes them want to do better and be better. And they think of your company as their family. And I think at the end of the day, that's like the biggest success you can have within your team. I mean, externally, there's still bigger goals, but internally, when you feel like y'all are working as one unit and y'all all have your basic value systems in place, that we're all going to be kind to each other, we're all going to think of where we're from, how we're doing, what fabrics we're using, how we can reduce wastage. When you work together as a unit, there's a lot that we can do.
Wow.
So yeah, definitely.
I just want to add to that and kind of say what it really does is it builds a sense of ownership even in their minds and hearts about the planet, about why we're doing this, and then as a result about even the work that they do. So they feel they're responsible in making that change and bringing that difference. So that feeling of pride is amazing. And initially those conversations are difficult for them to understand, like what you were saying, we're saving water, and how are we saving water? Oh, we're going to do a chemical free diet. There's nothing like a chemical free diet. It's impossible to diet without a chemical. But then once you start to engage them in conversations, it's like a eureka moment for them, the way it was for us when we first decided to get into this. So it's amazing to see this light spark up, and definitely it's love for them, and it's our love as a team at the back end, and then what we're doing as a result of what we're making. That's extremely nice to see.
Yeah, very true. Arundhati, I think you were wanting to say something.
No, I was just listening to Saisha and thinking, oh my God, this is not happening to me. This happens to everybody. So, our workers have all shifted from the leather industry, right? And they've all worked 15, 20 years in the leather industry, and they came and started working with me. And when I told them things like recycle zipper, and they heard the price of the zipper, I think they all thought that this girl is nuts. And they like, I could just see them looking at each other and exchanging that look, like she's going to run her dad's business to the ground, her business to the ground. But now, 1 year down the line, they understand that why do I say no plastic? Why do I say be mindful of packaging, be mindful of cutting? So now, after saying no plastic, no plastic, no plastic, now when I walk into my studio, I see a no plastic studio. But but also to say that, until they don't buy into your vision, you will never be able to grow. They have to understand and believe. And if you have to drum it down, you need to drum it down. And if you have to say it to them over and over and over again till they understand it, you have to do it with that kind of patience, because there's no other way. You cannot do this alone.
Yeah, exactly. It has to be collaboration in terms of everything, not just your employees, but other organizations together only will, every small step counts, like they say. So I think definitely. Yes. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time. So just last few thoughts, if anybody wants to share about what would be their ideal post-pandemic world for the sustainable fashion industry. Kriti, Priyansha, anybody?
I would say abundance of opportunities are there now post lockdown. I think we all can grab it big time.
Yeah, I think Swati, there has like the pandemic has slowed down businesses, but also it's given an opportunity for people to think. I'm not saying that it's going like the pandemic will get ended, everybody will get vaccinated, and everything's going to change. But there is because that's beyond wishful thinking. It's more, and it's not easy as well. It's like even us as producers or anybody as consumers, it's like 100% sustainability is not something that is possible. It's and within the industry nowadays, every time I've come across a vendor, big or small person we're sourcing from the wastages, or the person who we are going to for a collaboration to create ethical fashion. Both of them are not very different. It's not like anybody thought that, let's make waste when they started, say, about making fashion 150 years ago or something. It's scaled over time. Fast fashion's become a thing, capitalism's become a thing, and the change is slow, but it's happening. And even with and we see this during this time specifically with corporates as well, with other brands as well, with the need within the industry to collaborate a lot more in all of this like 2 years. So it's a big change for us as well, from coming from nobody talking about it, nobody talking about the need.
Yeah.
Sorry, am I audible?
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sorry, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so from everybody questioning the need for what we do to actually trying to make that change, little by little, small steps, parts of it, somebody changing their packaging, somebody looking at another material, somebody looking at, a better supply chain, and it's definitely, and controlling their supply chain, figuring out where to source from and things like that. So there are a lot of opportunities, like Manish said, and I think it's time for a lot more brands to come together to do more and better.
Correct.
Yeah, completely. So Harshita, I think I'll hand this over to you to kind of conclude the entire event.
So I am so happy to hear your experiences and the journey. One thing I have recollected from the entire conversation was every brand is doing their bit to become ethical and sustainable in their own entire supply chain. Upcycle Lux, I think we are on the same track because we are actually telling our consumers where they are not aware about what sustainability is or what ethical fashion is. We are actually telling them what actually ethical is and what authenticity means by catering to the impacts that's been behind the entire garment, how it was being produced, what kind of a carbon emission was reduced while creating such kind of a product. Because you know what, consumers understand, they okay, now even like 63% of the people understand what sustainability is. Those are the portions, they are millennials and generation Z. But the people who don't understand this, they want to understand about why is this particular garment being priced like this, because the entire supply chain goes in such a way that everywhere there is a reduction of some or the other elements. So that's when we decided to come together and bringing carbon emission forward, the kind of energy being saved in the entire supply chain, the water being saved, and then electricity being saved, to help our consumers to understand a bit that okay, so this particular garment is certified, they follow a certain SDGs into the entire supply chain, and then why this particular garment is ethical in nature. For this, I would like to showcase you our video, a small video that's the representation of Upcycle Lux. And I would love to share the entire journey, how we have already catered to, and the entire platform, how it looks like. So I hope like you guys like the entire video and share us your feedback. So I'll just present my screen. So is it visible?
Yeah.
Did you know? The fashion industry is the second largest polluter in the world. Conscious and sensible shopping choices is the need of the hour. But are the brands you are investing in really sustainable? We bring to you one-stop platform of authentic, sustainable, homegrown brands. To show you the sustainability strength, Upcycle Lux dive deep into the entire supply chain and evaluate the life cycle footprint of each product, right from the production of raw materials to its management and recyclability. At Upcycle Lux, we work with brands that recognize sustainable practices, use organic fabrics, and seek transparency in their supply chain. We perform a fact-based evaluation and calculate the true cost of fashion and the sustainability strength of each brand. By measuring your environmental footprint and comparing it to traditional industrial practices, we show you the emissions of carbon dioxide prevented, volume of water conserved, weight of chemicals avoided, and the units of electricity saved for every product you purchase from our store. We demonstrate how your purchase of each product positively impact the environment. Join us to have an experience like never before and be a part of the solution, not the pollution.
Thank you, guys. So this was.
Yeah, I hope you guys liked the video. Other than that, I think I would like to open the floor for the participants. If you all have any questions, I think we have some more time, so you guys can ask. Anybody?
Hi, Mamta here. I joined in a little late, Swati.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, that video was awesome, and congratulations to you folks. Good wishes. And all the sustainable fashion world, right? The main thing we all grapple with is the true cost. So how are the brands really handling that, grappling with this issue? How do we really educate and awareness? Yes, but still, how do we get the customer to really appreciate that this is the true cost, and this is what you'll have to buy it for? Very difficult thing to crack, right? So how are the sustainable brands really getting there on that?
I actually have an answer for that. When we owned a brick and mortar store, to be very, very honest with you, I would go out of my way trying to educate people as to what's going on, what is important, how our fabrics are made, how our garments are made, etc. And I really wanted them to understand the decision they were making while purchasing something sustainable over something fast fashion. They were significantly reducing their impact on their environment. And I really tried to do this for the longest time because it was one-on-one conversation. But what I realized over time was what I need to do is focus on my designs and focus on my product. And when a customer comes in and buys it, they're automatically reducing the impact. I don't have to over explain it to them. I don't have to literally write to them and say, this is why you need to do it. It should be something that just happens casually. Concentrate on your product, just really put it out there. And then when someone starts buying into your brand, they buy one product, they really like it, they come back, they buy more, then they're sort of buying into your brand. Then they realize over a period of time that, okay, I know what I'm doing is something better than what I would have done if I had bought fast fashion. So it is a long process, but I think the more you try to push it on them, initially, it could be in terms of on your price tag, or it could be in your social media. All of those things are fine. But in terms of conversation, I think you should just concentrate on the product. And I think that's what we've learned to do after doing a lot of over explaining and over justifying. It reached a point where I'm like, no, our energy should be at the product and everything else will just fall into place. And I think we leave the storytelling, like Lauren earlier said, to our social media, to our content, to our website, to our branding, to our packaging, etc. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
I think that
does.
Yeah, I think Saisha makes a lot of sense. And I think she wrapped up the conversation pretty well. That it is all like just to add to that, that it is pretty much about the product because especially when you're selling fashion and lifestyle, like if you come to think of it, you can live for a very long time with 15 garments. If somebody is buying into a new product, it has to be for the design or for the product that they're purchasing. And you can only make like a regular customer once they've bought into the idea. Like the idea is usually the secondary sell that you can feel good by buying what you're buying, but by the end of it, otherwise you'll only have like a one-time customer. You'll all like that person will purchase once, but you want them to come back to you and support what you do.
Yeah, Mamta, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thanks, Kriti, Saisha. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Mamta, for the question. Anybody else who would like to ask to our panel members? Okay, I guess not. If you all have any questions, you're free to reach us out on our social media platforms or our email IDs. I can send that to you personally. And anyway, thank you so much to all the panel members, everybody, for taking out time for this. We are really thankful for all of you to do this. It was such a great time and such good conversation. So yeah, thank you so much. And all the participants also, thank you so much for joining in. And I hope you guys check out all our platforms and especially Upcycle Arts. So yeah, please do. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All the best. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.